Hey folks, welcome to So-Called Normal. I'm Mark Hennick. Happy April Fool's Day. What's not a prank, what's not an April Fool, is that I have the incredible Neil Pasricha on the show today. You probably know Neil from his mega successful popular books, The Book of Awesome, the Happiness Equation, which came out not too long ago. He had a newish, it came out last year, audiobook called How to Get Back Up, and a number of others. He's a really quite a prolific writer and especially speaker. You know, he does probably hundreds of events every year all over Canada, the United States, and I assume around the world, talking about leadership and happiness and how to be happy. And he came into the studio and we chatted here in our little tiny hot dark studio, and it was so great. He's such an authentic person who I've learned so much from. And actually, Neil we talk about in the interview, and you're going to learn a lot from him, actually. I know I sure do, about how he was, I think, the first, and other than my wife, the only person that I texted when I was about to just quit my job, blow up my life, and write this book that I've just written, and that'll be out, a little later this year, because I trusted his advice so much. And he's just got such great insights into life and into happiness. He came to one of my talks once. He sat in the back of the room and then gave me notes on the 2-hour drive back from where I was. He's just such a great guy. So I could continue to sit here and gush about Neil Pasricha, or I can just let you listen to the interview and decide for yourself. So without further ado, here's Neil Pasricha, and this is So-Called Normal.
Sure, my name is Neil.
Hi, Neil.
I'm so flattered to be asked to come down here and talk to you, Mark. And I've been a fan and respected your work for a long time. I came out and saw you speak. I've watched your TED Talk kind of fly all over the internet, and I think the work you're doing is really impressive. So when you asked if I would be willing to chat with you, I was like, I'd love to. So I'm happy to chat about anything you like.
When you came and you mentioned watched me speak that time. So It wasn't just that you happened to be in town or at the same event. You drove 2 hours with me to the event, sat in the back, took notes, gave me your notes, which nobody had ever done for me before. I want to say that I was both impressed that you offered to do that I didn't have to drag it out of you. If you work with agents and things like that, sometimes they don't always give you the most candid feedback about what you do. But you were just so enthusiastically willing to do that for me, I felt like. And we didn't even really know each other that well.
No, we didn't. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I always think that formal education ends.
Yeah.
It's over when you're 20, 25 maybe, if you become a doctor or something. So I'm 39. So education for me is something I need to seek out. I'm thirsty for it, and I always have been, like I think most people are. But for me, I'm aware of the fact that there's 700 conferences a day in the United States alone. And at every one of those conferences, there is at least one subject matter expert who has some deep 10, 20, 30-year experience in an area presenting their life's work in a coagulated hour.
Right.
And that is an easier nugget to digest than an entire tome, like a book. And like I said, there's 700 of them a day. So actually, all I just happen to have is a pig searching for truffle type of nose for wanting to find good quality speakers and content, because I'm like, this is education,
right?
It's like high school or university or college professors, except in this case, I got to see you, which was great. And I hope this doesn't take anything away from it. But on every sort of week or two, I will go see other speakers.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I seek them out. So I'm always like, there's this huge conference in Toronto called The Art of Leadership. I'll often go and I'll sit in the back. I'll take notes.
Yeah.
I'll take notes on what I can learn. And I got that partly because I think naturally, like all of us, I wanted to learn, but also because I spent 10 years at Walmart.
Right.
And in Walmart, there's this sage. His name is Sam Walton. He started the company, and he was famous for carrying a yellow notepad, probably the same thing I gave you, and a pen, and going to every competitor's store every week and just taking notes with the spirit of continuous improvement, always learning, and everyone, there's none of this sort of we're better than you. It's always like, what can I learn?
Right.
And so
Well,
I think of it as my education. I walk around and I listen to people talk.
Yeah. So tell me more about what got you to where you are now. 10 years at Walmart.
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
Oh, you want like the quick life story?
Yeah, let's do the quick life story. Why not? So people, I mean, everybody knows who you are.
No. I'm happy to do the quick life story. My mom is from Nairobi, Kenya. My dad is from Amritsar, India. They emigrated to Canada in the late 1960s. My sister and I were born in a suburb east of Toronto called Oshawa. We grew up taking for granted everything that my parents couldn't take for granted: power, schools, hospitals, etc. I went and I did undergrad at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And then after that, I entered into like life, the way my parents told me should happen. You meet a girl, you settle down, you buy a house, you get a job, and life was just going according to plan. And then two major things happened to me in a very brief period of time. I shouldn't say they happened to me, but they happened, and I was devastated by them. The first is that my wife told me she didn't want to be married anymore, and that was 2 years into our marriage. The second thing was my best friend Chris, who had been suffering from mental illness for a long time, he sadly took his own life. And those two things happened very closely together. So suddenly I'm looking for a new place to live. I'm trying to write a eulogy. I'm trying to process a divorce and the idea that I'm alone, when I want to be the opposite of that.
How old were you then? Probably
I'm 28, 29 years old, so about 10 years ago. And that's when, Mark, honestly, on a lark, I started a blog called 1000awesomethings.com. And I did it to cheer myself up. I started coming home and writing about waiters and waitresses who bring you free refills, and when the turning to the cold side of the pillow in the middle of the night, and walking by the smell of a bakery. And you've got some nice, what are you eating there? Like banana bread?
I think so. I haven't actually tried it yet.
I would have called some sort of awesome thing from the thing I saw that day. And so I wrote that. Nobody reads blogs, 50,000 started a day, but my blog suddenly took off, hit 50 million people, won best blog in the world at the Webbies 2 years in a row. And that turned into a book called The Book of Awesome, which came out in 2010.
What really triggered that, do you think? Just word of mouth, or was there some big endorsement?
Yeah. No. There was no big endorsement. At the time of the internet 10 years ago, there was a few big websites called fark.com, Fark.com, Reddit, which is still around today, and digg.com. And I wrote a post, number 980, called Old Dangerous Playground Equipment. I'm a month into my blog. Again, no one's reading the blog. And this post about rusty, teeter-totters and burning your legs on hot slides and flying off the sort of merry-go-round, it struck a nerve, and it got posted on the front of Fark.com. And that hit 50,000 people in one day. And from that, places like Wired magazine and so on picked it up. And I was like, oh, well, if those sites can pick up my pieces, then I'll submit to them. And so eventually started hitting the front page of Reddit and Digg repeatedly. Yeah. And so the number exponentially grew. And then that also helped because when the book deal stuff happened, they were like, well, this is way before like email lists and social media followers and how big's your platform? It was like, they were like, well, you have the little counter on the side of your blog and it says like 6 million people. Right. So here's a lot of money to turn this into a book.
It was a different time. It was a simpler time.
It was an easier time. You just had to get hit. So you just had to refresh 100 times a night. And so that was my first book. It called The Book of Awesome.
Right. Which was a massive success, of course.
That was a massive success. And then it spawned a few follow-ups. Book of Even More Awesome, Book of Holiday Awesome, 5 Calendars of Awesome, 2 Journals of Awesome. And so that was really kind of what I became known for. This whole time, by the way, I'm working at Walmart. I'm an HR manager at the world's largest company, kind of in this gigantic hierarchical but fun place to work.
Which, just to put that in context, I mean, here you are in your upper middle management job with a worldwide best-selling book. I mean, that was a New York Times bestseller, right?
Yeah.
What else? What other kind of acclaim has that?
Oh, it sold 1 million copies.
Yeah,
it's been on the bestseller list for 200 weeks. It was the number 2 all-time book sold ever in the last 10 years in this country. After there's this astronaut guy, he sold more.
This astronaut
Chris Hadfield. I'm just joking. So I'm number 2 after him.
So how then do you balance those two things, being a worldwide best-selling author and being an HR manager?
Well, the lucky part for me was that the company was really supportive. And so when I said, do you mind if I take 2 weeks off to go do the Today Show and travel around and doing a couple book tours? They were like, sure, because it's
Sure.
I'm not like writing like Perez Hilton stuff. Like it's a positive thing. So they also were wise enough to say, well, why don't you come speak at the Walmart shareholders meeting in Bentonville, Arkansas? Why don't you come speak at the company? So I ended up talking internally a lot about it too.
And meanwhile, I imagine your book is on their shelves.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So had to be careful ethically, make sure that it wasn't like because I asked them to. It wasn't. So it was like, Heather Reisman made it a Heather's pick. They were like the last retailer probably to pick it up at the end of the day. But,
really?
Well, I'm just saying it's mass, in the mass market world.
Yeah.
That industry, Walmart, Target, Costco, they only pick up the books that are already kind of bestsellers, right?
Right.
So, that was all happening. But the way I thought about it, Mark, was I thought about my life in terms of buckets at the time. I mean, first of all, I'm like starkly single, so it's not like I got a lot to do. Like, let's put it that way. So if you think of a week as having 168 hours, I always thought of it in 3 buckets. I was always like, well, you're supposed to sleep 8 hours a night. And so if you multiply 8 by 7 days a week, that's 56. Okay? And then I'm like, well, you're supposed to work about 8 hours a day. And most contracts say 40 hours a week. But mine, of course, you're commuting and you have emails at home. So I was like, let's round that up to 56 hours. And you might work a bit on the weekend. But if you do that math, like I said, a week has 168 hours in it. You break it down into 3, you get 3 buckets of 56. And so I was always really conscious of the fact that I slept a bucket, I worked a bucket, and then I just, as you said, did this book thing in another bucket. I'd come home from work, I'd write my blog, I'd answer emails, and then I'd go back to work the next morning. And so I never thought of it as work. I loved it. That spawned things like I did a TED Talk called The 3 A's of Awesome. And I talked about for the first time the story of losing my marriage and losing my friend. And then more recently, I guess if you want me to kind of catch up to today, I have a couple newer books out on the topics of happiness, resilience, and failure.
Right.
So those are kind of what I'm working on now. I quit the full-time job pretty recently at Walmart in 2016 after the happiness equation came out. And now I'm dedicating myself full-time to writing, which, as you know, means I just do a million random little scraps of things.
Writing in your head most of the time.
I'm writing in my head. I'm doing a podcast now called 3 Books. I gave 58 speeches this year, so I'm traveling a lot. So I was in New York yesterday. Like I'm trying my best to get the messages out there that you can own your own happiness, and here's how.
So why happiness and awesomeness? Was it as a something to try to drag yourself out of this? Were you even in a hole? I guess after the divorce and the marriage breakdown and the suicide.
Oh, definitely. I lost 40 pounds due to stress. I have pictures of me at this Webby Awards in New York with Martha Stewart on my left and Jimmy Fallon on my right, and I look like a skeleton. Like I can show you that. I can literally pull up the pictures and show you. And people at work were saying to me, "You look great. What's your secret?"
Why do you think they were saying that?
Because when anyone loses weight, we think we have been trained to think that is a positive thing.
Right.
When someone loses weight, we automatically put it in the category of, what'd you stop eating bread? Right. Are you exercising? What, you got bulletproof coffee now? Tell me your secret, because I would like to do the same. There's no thinking that it could possibly be like devastating heartbreak, lack of sleep, and lack of food.
Yeah.
That's really what it was.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way to lose weight.
Yeah.
But that's so that you get that positive, which, by the way, totally messes you up mentally. Because now, in addition to going through everything at work, you're also thinking, I look fantastic.
Right. According to
one woman came
else,
up to me at Walmart and she was like, "Who's that on your name badge?" We had to wear these name badges on our chest with our pictures on them. She's like, "Who's that on your name badge?" I'm like, "Well, that's me." She's like, "But that guy's fat."
Oh, God.
And I'm like, "Well, that's the way I looked a month ago."
Yeah.
I just can't sleep and I can't eat. So I'm like, I'm just losing weight.
When did were you searching for something to be grateful for?
Well, here's the thing. If I thought back to my childhood, my parents were immigrants and they filled me with this idea that life was full of simple pleasures.
Right.
My dad would marvel at the stickers on the fruits at the grocery store and be like, "Can you believe we can get mangoes from Mexico and kiwis from New Zealand? I can't believe it." My parents always they were like fascinated by snow. They didn't grow up with snow. So they're like, "Let's go skiing." And it was their first time going too. So imagine going skiing as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old or whatever, or skating. wedding and your parents are also experiencing, they're like, how do you tie laces? Like, let's figure it out. So I was imbued with this sense of appreciation and gratitude for simple pleasures. But I could sense then when I was kind of knocked off kilter, I could sense that version of me was far away.
Right.
But I still had that, what's that word? Ballast? Is that the right? I still had that like sentiment inside me that there's good stuff. I just can't see it.
That's how you were raised.
That's how I was raised. So I tried to start that blog to cheer myself up. I remember I was reading, I don't actually talk about this very much. I was reading Maclean's magazine and I read about this blog called StuffWhitePeopleLike.com by Christian Lander. And it was like, white people like The Wire. White people like, it was like a really like acerbic, kind of sarcastic, like this like, kind of like an evolution of like David Brooks's like Bobos and stuff like that version of white people. And the article was like, and he got a $300,000 book deal. And I read that, I went to the blog, I read it, I was like, this is just so nasty and negative. I love the fact that he did it. Sure. And it was a Toronto guy. He was living in LA named Christian Lander. And so I reached out to him and he's like, yeah, man, I was like, how did you do this? I'm like, I just started a blog. So I was like, okay, like I can just do this, but make it positive.
Right.
Because that's what I needed.
Do you think that, and I love the idea of awe, that underlying feeling in awesome and in gratitude. Does it need desperation? Do you need desperation in order to find awe?
No, I don't think so. But I think it's so easy to lose it. So what I'm trying to say is like forests don't have ad campaigns.
Right.
Right? Yet the trees release phytoncins, which when you breathe them in, lower your cortisol. And going on a 20-minute nature walk, according to Michael Babiak and a team of researchers who published it in the Journal of Psychosomatic Medicine, actually outperforms antidepressants or the combination of walking and taking antidepressants. Off 3 20-minute nature walks a week. But forests don't have ad campaigns the way pills do.
Right.
And the way they don't have forest companies like there's drug companies. So awe can get lost. And I don't just mean forests. I'm talking about any simple pleasure.
Sure.
There's no advertisement campaign for flipping to the cold side of the pillow, peeling an orange in one shot, finding $5 in your coat pocket.
And that boost of oxytocin or dopamine or whatever it is that comes from these things, that's something that you create in many ways, right?
Exactly. And so I just thought, and I still think, that we lose sight of those simple pleasures so easily. And yet, the biggest comment I got on the blog and the book was, they didn't say, thanks for showing me. They said, thanks for reminding me. That's quite a big difference. No one ever said, Neil Pasricha taught me to appreciate simple pleasures. They all just said, Neil Pasricha reminded me that I actually already love squeezing the last tiny drop of toothpaste out of the tube and getting one last brush.
Right.
But I never noticed it. Or watching you have coffee, watching cream go into coffee, and these little tiny moments actually fill our whole days.
Sure. I mean, that is your whole day.
That is your whole day. Right. And yet we're obsessed with fires that happen 10,000 miles away.
Right. How do we lose it then? Why do we not pay attention?
Well, there's a huge, there's a lot of research around this. Basically, for lack of better words, your brain gets hijacked. Okay, and here's why: because in the world most people live in, you have a cell phone. You touch it 2,500 times a day. That's the latest stat I found. 2,500 times a day. We use them 4 hours and 20 minutes a day. True stat. Every single sensory input we get from those devices is meant to give us a dopamine rush and also turn our brain into valuing extrinsic motivators. What's the difference between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivators? Well, when you build a deck or bake a cake, that's for intrinsic purposes. You're not going to sell it for a lot of money. You're not going to get a ton of praise. You're not going to be listed in a magazine. However, if you post it on Instagram, you're going to measure and track how many likes you get, how many comments you get. Those are the extrinsic motivators. And everything is designed that way. So what I'm saying is, if you open my phone right now, there's a bunch of icons. They'll have little numbers in the corner telling me how many things are waiting for me, right? Like you got 3 tweets you haven't read. You got 1,700 emails you haven't read. Mine's like something like that. And those, we know from research, I wish I had the research right in front of me right now, there's this amazing research by the guy named Deci, D-E-C-I, that shows that when we value extrinsic motivators, we do not see our intrinsic motivators anymore. Right. So they did this amazing study where they had 11-year-old girls try to teach piano to like 6-year-old girls. And one group of girls was told, you're going to receive a lot of thanks. And the other group of girls was told, you're going to receive a $10 coupon to go to the movies. But you got half an hour to teach them piano. The ones that were told that you were going to get thanked stayed longer, were more patient, cared more, and the students learned better. The ones that were given the $10 movie coupon, although it appears to be more value, actually were frustrated more easily, left at 30 minutes exactly, because that's what they were told and paid to do.
Want to get to the movies.
Exactly. And it's not their necessary fault, because the extrinsic motivator is clouding the intrinsic motivator. What I'm saying is that the $10 movie coupon prevented them from even seeing the deeper intrinsic value of how good it feels to be thanked by a 6-year-old girl for teaching her piano. That's pretty moving.
Well, and there's no connection between going to the movies and teaching this kid piano, right? But the thanks and the gratitude and the accomplishment, there's a direct connection, it seems.
Yeah, so I think that this happens in a lot of our life. I actually have a chapter in the Happiness Equation, chapter 2, which my summary is, do it for you.
Right.
When you're doing things for yourself, you actually get to see the purpose for doing them. Right. And I draw this triangle in the happiness equation I call it the success triangle. There is the three things. I'll start with S. There is sales success, there is social success, and there's self-success. And my argument is you can't have all three. So pick which one you want. Like, you got this podcast. Is it downloads? That's sales or ad sales. Is it social? Do you want to be listed on Apple's little list of best things? That doesn't mean nothing. I've been on that. 3 books, my podcast is on that. I can tell you we don't have that many downloads, right? but that's okay. I wasn't aiming for that. Or is it just for yourself? Is it just because you want to learn and grow and put a movement and a voice out to the world? Which one is it, Mark? Because I'm not trying to slap you with it.
I know which one it is for me. I don't know about E1 or our friends or in the advertising
that's
side.
An important conversation to have, because you can't have all three. No one has all three. And the good example of this is, look at the movie that won Best Picture. Right. It's always a sales flop.
Right.
And it's always a social success. And there's no higher honor than winning Best Picture at the Oscars. Moonlight won, and it's like 18 million sales. Meanwhile, Fast and Furious 7 has never got nominated for nothing, and it's like 500 million in sales.
Right.
You can't have both, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing it for yourself, you might not have even released the movie.
Right.
Like, it might be an indie film that maybe gets into one festival and it's your local town and you just did a story of your grandmother's life and it makes you proud and it makes her proud and you're thrilled.
Right.
That might be enough for you.
So what do you say to people? Because I think a lot about this idea. And in psychology, there's this concept of the internal locus of control versus the external. So either the world around you controls you and how you feel and you're a slave to your circumstance, or it's the other way around. You control the circumstances that you put yourself in. It's probably neither extreme, but people like me who tend to have avoidant attachment styles, all that means is that I think that if I'm the one that has to do it because nobody else can do it like I can do it, which is not true. It's a control thing. But where I'm going with it is that I feel like if I'm feeling depressed, if I'm waking up in the morning and I feel like I can't drag myself out of bed, that's my problem. I need to do it anyway. I need to force myself. I need to arrange my life to do it. I don't think I need to take more medication to help me, or I need to call my therapist because they're going to help me, coach me through it, or get me to do it. I don't need an external person to tell me how to be happy. But I think that gets increasingly a lot of negative feedback, that we're in a world right now where you have to take your medication, you have to go to your therapist, you have to have other people to make you happy, right? So what kind of, have you gotten any criticism for this idea of these simple things diminishing, going and talking to your doctor and getting your maybe there's something wrong with your brain, or maybe there's something up with you that needs to be fixed?
Luckily, I haven't. I have got a lot of letters from people saying, I was looking at a site for how to take my own life, and then I found yours. Or I gave this book to my daughter who's in college, and she's struggling with severe mental illness, and she says it's the first self-help book she's read that makes any sense to her. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no self-help in it. It's just a list of simple pleasures. But to me, the thing I come back to, Mark, and maybe this is related to you, what you're saying is that there's that famous pie chart by Sonia Lubomirsky in the book, The How of Happiness. So Sally Lubomirsky is one of the world's foremost positive psychologists. She was at Stanford, now she's at the University of California. And she's an amazing academic whose stuff I'm like, here's what she says. Like I'm like the guy who's like trying to tell people about her work. And she has this model that says 50% of your happiness is based on your genetic set point. 10% is based on your circumstances. So like what's happening to you right now.
Right.
And 40% is based on your intentional activities.
The way that I just bumbled through my question, you made a lot more clear that this is what I'm trying to figure out. Where does our happiness come from?
Yeah.
Is it intrinsic? Does it depend on our circumstances, or is it in this place in between?
So when I've heard Sonia Lubomirsky talks about it, she says, you know what, this model I purported and I put out there kind of because of all my research in the book has been mutated, and now everyone's saying like this is firm, this is how happiness is caused. She's like, I wish it didn't. So I'm just gonna it's a posit, like I'm proposing it.
Sure.
But I kind of believe it. So if you have a parent and they have 2 children, they would tell you quickly who has the higher or lower genetic set point on happiness. So you can see in like sort of the same genetics, kind of that's right there. Right? Or me and my sister, or me and my whatever, right? People can see that. Then 10% circumstances. This is a shocker for people. They don't get this. There's that famous paraplegic versus lottery winner study that shows that after a year of either winning the lottery or becoming a paraplegic, like losing an arm in a car accident, you revert back to kind of your baseline.
Sure.
And in fact, sometimes the paraplegics are happier. They feel luckier to be alive. For the lottery winners have all kinds of new problems, that they didn't have before, like all these boat payments or whatever, and people bothering them for money or whatever. So my point is, that's the shocker for people, that circumstances are only 10%. And then there's this buzz like and 40% is your intentional activity. And people are like, well, what's that? I'm like, that's the place I play in. So when I'm giving speeches and when I'm writing books, that my whole world of living an intentional life, all the books I've done is all in that 40%.
Right.
It's guess what? You can only control one of the 3 pieces of the little Trivial Pursuit circle. And it happens to be, luckily, the second biggest.
Right.
You can't control your genetics. But it's the only one you can control, so let's play there.
Is that intention a choice? Can you choose where you focus that?
Well, I think, here's how I say it to people. I say, you're awake 1,000 minutes a day, okay? The average person is awake for 1,000 minutes a day. By the way, I'm obsessed with the number 1,000. The average person is also alive for 1,000 months. Oh, wow. I got a lot of stuff to say about the number 1,000. Of course, my original blog is called 1,000 Awesome Things. My podcast, 3 Books, is trying to uncover the 1,000 most formative book in the world. I'm obsessed with the number 1,000 because I think it's both challenging and attainable. You could climb, you could go on 1,000 runs or bake 1,000 cakes, or, you could do 1,000 of something. So anyway, my obsession with 1,000 lends itself into this daily little model where I say, you're awake 1,000 minutes a day. My argument is, could you take 20 of them to make the other 980 more positive? If you could, I'm giving you a 2% lever. You're using 2% of your day's waking minutes to make the other 98% better. People are like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I can tell you without a doubt that the studies that are coming out about walking through a forest, about writing in a journal, about reading literary fiction, about singing in a choir, about like, you and I could go on and on and on. This is the stuff I look at a lot. If you do one of those things for just 20 minutes, we know almost everything we can test for improved in the other 980. You're more creative at work. You're easier to get along with. From a work perspective, you have higher productivity. You're actually 40% more likely to get a promotion in the next 12 months. Like anything you can test for improves when you prime your brain for positivity. Now, is it always a choice? Can you always wake up and put yourself in a good mood? No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like it's a sprinkle of pixie dust. I'm just saying if you believe in this idea, then I'll give you the set of things you can choose from. And I just listed a few of them, and I can go into detail on any of those. And you can pick one. You can say, you know what? Instead of jumping out of bed and reading Trump's tweets and flying around the kitchen looking at the news, I'll actually instead wake up and read 20 pages of fiction.
Right.
I'll actually instead join my church's choir because I know that there's massive side benefits. Singing in specifically a choir is so good for you, right? Or I'll journal before bed. And journaling's super hard for almost everybody. They're like, I get a blank piece of paper. Well, I don't have writer's block, right? But then all I say is, well, just write down a list of good things that happened to you today. And once you start the first one, the second one comes easier. Once you start two, and then suddenly 20 minutes has passed, and you, at the end of your month or your year, you have a whole freaking book of stuff that made you happy.
Right.
And writing it triggers Area 17 in your visual cortex. You replay it in your mind. And if you read your own journal, you replay it again.
Right.
You know, that's a famous study done at the University of Texas called How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Words. And they found that couples in a relationship, this is by Slatcher and Pennebaker, couples in a relationship who journaled for 2 weeks were 50% more likely to stay together in their relationship after the 3-month mark.
Right.
And I always joke that 3 months must be a very long relationship at the University of Texas or any college campus.
Yeah. But what I like about this is especially that you have such a mastery of the research, because there's lots of people out there, kind of just doing the motivational bunk stuff. And I got into an argument on Twitter. I get into a lot of arguments on Twitter, but one of the most recent ones was about just this kind of thing. And this other person was talking about how, this new wavy kind of wellness culture doesn't really do anything, that we really need to be focusing on the severely ill, the sick, and treating them and analyzing them, diagnosing them, all that stuff, that's how we make people happier. I really strongly disagree with that and push back against that. But it seems like science and the wellness culture that you're talking of don't always converge, that there's a lot of good ideas out there that don't have a whole lot of evidence behind them. But it seems like you know the evidence pretty deeply and are convinced by it.
Well, you know what's so funny is that I gave this TED Talk in 2010, and I did it at TEDx Toronto in front of 400 people at the Glenn Gould studio in the CBC building. It got picked up on TED.com, and one day on TED.com, they put a list of their top 20 most popular TED Talks. And this is going to sound so funny and cheesy, and I'm just going to talk about it anyway. I've never talked about this before. I was number 11. Okay. I was number 11 on that list of top 20 TED Talks or whatever, with the most hits. So I was like, I don't know, 1 million hits at the time or something. Massively paling in comparison to your TED Talk. And
that's very kind.
And so what happened is the next day, or like in the next coming weeks, TED.com put the top 10 TED Talks in a playlist on their front page, which remains there to this day. So those 10 TED Talks have all like 10x'd in views. They're all like 20, 30, 40 million hits. Ken Robinson, Brené Brown, Sean Achor, Dan Pink, super well-deserved and amazing. Susan Cain, amazing TED Talk. And mine didn't make that cut because it was number 11.
Right.
And so I watched those talks and I'm like, wait a minute, Brené Brown's quoting research. Oh, Sean Achor's quoting research. Oh, Dan Pink's quoting research. And I watched my own TED Talk and I'm like, who's this guy? He's just talking about like his life and like how he found these 3 A's of awesome attitude and awareness and authenticity. And I was kind of down on myself. Sure. I was like, oh, my talk wasn't appealing to people's left brain. I wasn't scratching the itch. So I actually did a huge overcorrection where the pendulum, I swung inside myself way too far the other way. I read a ton of studies on I memorized them, I make cue cards, and I wanted to be able to, in my speeches and in my Q&As, be able to use all this scientific proof. And what I noticed was 2 things started happening. I'll be very honest with you. One is I got a lot more nods and a lot more bookings and a lot more busier and all that stuff. And I got a lot less standing ovations.
Really?
It was like the motivation thing I was doing before actually touched people's hearts.
This is fascinating.
And so then what I did, of course I haven't learned grammar yet, but one thing I did was I then decided that, you know what, I'm a heart-based guy.
Right.
And I will wield the tool of research as weaponry to get my heart-based message across.
Yeah.
So now if you come see me speak, and I'd love for you to come see a new one anytime you'd like, Mark.
Love to.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. I'm speaking in Toronto actually coming up soon. Is I, in my brain, have a very heart-oriented message, and I do what I just did with you, and I'm just like, and here's the proof. And here's the proof. And here's the proof. Just so that, frankly, the guys in the room, if I can be honest, it's usually the guys in the room who are like, okay, I believe it now. It's like, I was just convinced by the logic. If I have an audience of largely female, they're with me. They're smarter than the logic.
Right.
They're smart. They know that that's true. And the guys are like, well, prove it. I'm like, okay, here's the proof. And they're like, oh, I'm with you now. Now I will actually read fiction. I will go buy a book that is not true.
Because the scientists say so.
Because the scientists said that's going to expand my mirror neurons, and actually the empathy and the understanding and compassion in my brain will expand, and I will become a better leader. Right. I won't be as stiff and robotic.
According to this study, read by 3 people and their mothers.
Exactly. You're pointing out that the whole kind of ruse of all of academia.
Right. Well, I didn't quite point out that broad of a point, but you're not wrong.
Yeah. I know, not everything is like, kind of like, not everything has a tremendous, right. So actually, that's kind of where I'm at now. So now you said you got a hold of the research. Actually, it's just I'm using it to prove the points I already wanted to make.
Right. So do you? I mean, you're sounds like pretty secure in what you have to deliver to certain audiences, and it tends to be broadly applicable. But do you change your message or your approach substantially depending on the audience?
Yeah. So here's the thing, and a lot of people know this, a lot of people don't, is that there's 2 kinds of stand-up comics in the world. There's the Jerry Seinfelds. Okay, Jerry Seinfeld is a stand-up comic who works on his material. And then based on what laughs he gets, he takes that same material and he revises it and he edits it a bit. And then he uses it again. And then he revises and edits it a bit. And it's again, if you go see Jerry Seinfeld live, which I have, and I don't know if you have, you're like, I heard half of these jokes before.
Right.
Like it's not new stuff. You still are laughing, you're still clapping, you love it. And his argument is, I'm trying to deliver the best hour I can. That's what you're paying me for. Yeah. Okay. Then there's this other body of stand-up comics, which I used to call like the Louis C.K. I need a new figurehead, I guess. But Louis C.K. was like, I'll use what's happened in my life lately. That's my subject matter. I get to the place and it's like, I got here. And so the argument there is constantly be refreshing your content. Make sure your content's always new. But what people are actually paying you for is they want the latest and greatest, something that no one's ever seen before. And it's certainly much more challenging to do that.
Sure.
So where do I fall? Once again, I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. I keep a consistent skeletal framework of my messages, and then when all the dynamics change for every, like they're like, some speeches are 15 minutes, some are an hour and a half. Like right away, you're like, okay, there's a huge length difference. Some speeches are like, we just laid off half the company and we need to talk, you need to talk to people about change. And other ones are like, we've had the best year we've ever had and we need you to pump up our sales folks for how to beat this. Those are totally different messages.
Yeah.
In the design of my current speech, I have pockets and room for where I'm going to like put in the messaging that fits that audience's feelings. And I'm also curating from now, because it just takes, just because I've been doing it a long time, which specific case studies, which specific stories can I use for this audience?
Right.
So the sort of, if I were to give you my full speech, it might be like 5 hours long, but I like pulled the hour that worked for this speech.
Right.
It's not all new. Yeah. I know some of those things are like stale jokes, but I'm using them because that will work to get this point across.
Sure. And there's, I relate a lot to that, and I'm probably closer to the Jerry Seinfeld side in many ways. That, I've tried a lot of different stories and jokes and things that I know work, and they don't always. And that's part of a risk of it, right? This might work 8 times out of 10, but there's always going to be those 2 where it flops, but you move on anyway. You barrel ahead, right?
Yeah, and if it flops, you might take the joke out.
And absolutely, and that happens too, and has happened lots of times, even with sometimes whole sections or whole stories. And I find, though, that even when repeating it, I don't know if you can relate to this, but if it's something very personal, I still try to access something personal in myself, so it doesn't feel like you're just beating the emotion out of it, right? That it's still very personal and still feels new, I think, even though you've done it 1,000 times.
Totally.
I don't think I don't know if I've told you this or not, but a little over a year ago, would have been a year in October, I was on the verge. I had this book deal that was not going anywhere because I couldn't focus on it. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the energy to focus on it. And I was thinking about quitting my job. And you were the first person that I texted. I was sitting in the Air Canada lounge at the Ottawa airport on the way to some talk or another. I have no idea what. And I knew, I just got off a conference call that I had kind of pre-planned in my head. Okay, if this doesn't go the way that I need it to go, which in my mind meant that they had confidence in me to deliver on this particular project, then I think I'm out. That was kind of my red line. But then I had thought also to myself, I'd set a bunch of these red lines and I kept pushing it back and back because I was afraid. So I texted you. And I think this was after we had done.
I was the first person you texted.
I think you were the only person I texted.
What did you say?
I texted you and I said, Neil, I'm about to quit my job. What do I do? Basically, or something to that effect.
Oh, I hope I replied.
You sent me back this article. You did. You replied very quickly. You sent me back this article that you wrote for the Toronto Star, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I absolutely can. Now I know what you're talking about. Okay. So basically, if you're thinking about making a major change in your career, in your life, in your work, whatever, then there is 2 tests you need to do. And that's what I wrote the Toronto Star article about. The 2 tests are the deathbed test, which is which will I regret less on my deathbed? So is it staying in the job I'm in or trying this risky new thing? Which one would I regret less? And the second test is the Plan B test, which is what will I do if this whole thing fails? And so for me, when I quit Walmart, I was like, well, of course I'd rather look back on my life and I tried the writing thing, you know? And the Plan B test is I polish my LinkedIn profile and get another job.
Right.
So I passed both those tests. If some people get to the place where they're like, well, I don't think I care which one I do, or if it fails, I'm really screwed. I won't be able to pay my mortgage and, my family loses everything. Well, that's a different kind of, you'd go through a different step. So hopefully you did those 2 tests and you passed them.
I did. So I read your text. I read the article. Before I left the lounge, I ended up submitting my resignation.
No way.
3 months later, I had one of those moments where like, holy shit, what did I do? Oh my God.
Yeah. That's normal.
Well, apparently it is. Apparently it is. But I am so glad now that I took that step, because going through the process of writing the memoir and then it turns out rewriting it and editing and all that goes into it, and realizing, of course, that you have the power over how you tell your story. It's yours. There's lots of other people's stories that intersect it, sure, but how you tell and how you remember and how you the meaning that you give to that story really defines a lot of your outlook on your life, whether or not you're a victim of it or it's material to work with. So now I think it would have been my greatest regret had I never done that. It's opened up a whole new world that I'm still figuring out.
Well, I don't know if you are familiar with Nurse Bronnie Ware.
No.
She you should check her out. She wrote one of the most popular articles of all time in The Guardian newspaper. She helped something like 5,000 people die. And she's a hospice worker. And so she wrote this article in The Guardian called The 5 Greatest Regrets of the Dying.
Yes.
Does this sound familiar?
It does, yeah.
The number 1 regret is, I wish I lived a life true to myself, not the one others wanted me to live.
Yeah.
It's the first thing. That's the thing she heard from thousands of people right before they died.
Yeah.
So no wonder this article went viral, because it's pretty powerful and it inspires people, like hopefully you and me, to keep making sure that we do it for you and be a little selfish, but in the service of doing better work for the world.
And that was one of my, it took me a long time to realize that when I was a suicidal teenager, I didn't want to die, that I just didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to live that life. So when I came to that realization, it was, well, I could die, or I could just try on a different life. And if it doesn't work, there's always that death option, sure. Yeah. But there's so many other options that I could try to reinvent myself. Why not just dive in and give it a go, right? And it sounds like you've been doing that almost all your life, diving in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. I was pretty risk averse look, I'm 39. I quit my job 2 years ago. If I was really risk averse, I wouldn't have kept going to schools and more school and getting a corporate job. And actually, I could have done this when I wish I'd done this career that I'm in now 15 years earlier.
Sure. But would you have come to the same realization had you actually done that?
Well, I don't know, because I was so the East Indian culture that I grew up in was work really hard, get straight A's, and be a doctor.
Right.
That was the cultural upbringing. And if you aren't a doctor, it better be a lawyer. And if you aren't a lawyer, it better be at least a professional job. And having no job or being an artist is extremely unknown in the cultural upbringing I had. So I was going to stick to that that's just the worldview I had. And what I was finding is after I started my blog at Walmart, guess what? It took off. And then guess what? I was mouthier at work. I was speaking truth to power more because I had this other thing that I was good at. And because I had the Walmart job, which paid me a salary, I was I was able to not accept ads for my blog, and I was able to therefore write whatever I wanted. I wrote a lot of off-color stuff. It's not off-color like bad. It's more just like I wrote about like hearing a stranger fart in public,
right.
and I wrote like a big essay about that or whatever. And I didn't care what an advertiser thought,
right?
Because I just got to do it. So I was finding that the two things were creating risk-taking behavior in both, which ultimately led to success in both, which ultimately made it very difficult to quit my Walmart job because I'm kept going up the ladder there. But that also, maybe I would have quit 15 years ago. Maybe I couldn't have because I wouldn't have had that infrastructure and that confidence and that scaffolding to kind of really bravely do the artist thing with a lot of kind of security in place.
So what would you say to somebody listening who still lacks that confidence?
Well, it's about how many legs your table has. And so you could describe legs as income streams. Okay. Chris Guillebeau wrote a great new book called Side Hustle, and he talks a lot about how here's how in 27 days, I think he actually says in the subtitle, in 27 days for less than $200, you come up with a side hustle. So I'm like, are you a wedding DJ on the weekends? Are you selling real estate at night? Are you also doing X and Y and Z? And when you add more legs to your table, that's what I'm describing, right? Because I was working a full-time job at Walmart, getting paid for that. Had the blog, was not getting paid for that. Had book deals, was getting paid for that. Had book royalties, was getting paid for that. Was speaking, was getting paid. So you see, then my table gave me confidence. I didn't have confidence. It was just because I was like, I had more things. And the more things you had means any one of those things could fall and you would be okay.
Right.
And that's what I didn't gain confidence.
No, you built it, maybe.
Exactly.
I
sort of scaffolded it up.
Yeah.
And I put enough things in place where, again, if any of those things got knocked off, I'd be okay. So it's adding more legs to your table.
Yeah.
So it feels sturdy. You don't want a cocktail table.
Right.
You want like a dining room table.
So if you want to be confident, build a dining room table.
I'm serious.
Yes. Actually, that would be a great project. I'm terrible at carpentry, but I mean, it sounds good. All right. So anything else you want to talk about? Anything we missed here?
I'm happy to talk about anything else you want, but I don't have anything I need to talk about.
Are you happy? You're good? Are you, actually, there's a question. Are you happy?
Well, happiness is a practice. It is like yoga. At the end of yoga, do you do yoga?
A little bit, yeah.
So at the end, do they ever say, Mark, you're done. You nailed it. You're finished yoga.
Yeah.
Like
mastered yoga.
You're done.
Yeah.
They don't say that. You know what they say every time? Thank you for your practice. That word is very important because it implies that there's no ending. It implies that this is a journey, that you constantly improve, that you always get a little bit better, but you never get there. And happiness, I feel, is the same way. Yeah, it's a choice. Yeah, there's 40% of the pie chart. Yeah, we can do intentional activities. But all of us are going to have bad days and off days and bad moments and sad things and breakups and losing our job. And life is there too. So think of happiness not as a destination, but as a journey. And remember that it really is a practice.
Neil Pasricha, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Go check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Especially, I'm everywhere else too, but those in particular, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, at Mark Hennick, at MarkHennick. Hey, if you're looking for some help, some better help, in fact, head over to betterhelp.com/Mark, enter the promo code Mark, M-A-R-K, and you can get a 7-day free trial of safe, effective, credentialed psychotherapy. Give it a try. If you don't know if psychotherapy is right for you or not, give it a try, see what you think, and if you're like me, it could be a lot of benefit to you. So betterhelp.com/Mark, enter the promo code Mark for a 7-day free trial of safe, effective psychotherapy. Thanks for joining us once again this week. Tune in again next week for another great guest. This has been So-Called Normal.